Yeah.
But the fundamental thing is we as adult human beings need to take responsibility for our own lives and our own decisions.
Yeah.
And we need not hand that responsibility over to governmental institutions, especially when it concerns something as intimate and personal as our consciousness. And my view is the ancient world had the right attitude to this kind of thing,
Yeah.
and the modern world does not, and that we can sit down and learn a lot from the ancient world. A lot of people ask me, you know, Hancock, you've been arguing that there's been a lost civilization in the human story, but what sort of civilization do you think it was? Well, one of the things I think is it was a civilization that used psychedelics. I think it was a civilization that emerged from shamanism, but did not stay at the hunter-gatherer stage, but that took the essence of shamanism and integrated it into a very different kind of civilization from our own, which pursued things in different ways. A lot of archaeologists have said to me, but we don't find any plastic bottles from the Ice Age. That means there was no advanced civilization during the Ice Age. Well, hang on. Maybe an advanced civilization might have decided never to get involved in plastic in the first place. Maybe there would have been a clear choice not to make plastic. Maybe they did things in completely different ways. Maybe they cultivated powers of the human mind that we dismiss and regard as completely unimportant. You know, woo-woo.
Yeah, this is the thoughts about Egypt, correct?
It's about Egypt,
Yeah.
and about other things. I mean, the specific example I give is above the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid are 5 further chambers. And these chambers are roofed and floored with granite beams that weigh about 70 tons each. And there are hundreds of them. And these 70-ton granite beams, which to put in context, a 70-ton beam is equivalent in weight to 35 large SUVs. These 70-ton granite beams have been elevated to a height of more than 350 feet above the ground and carefully and precisely placed in position. It is very hard for archaeologists to explain how that was done using purely leverage and mechanical advantage. You can say, oh, perhaps they built a ramp and hauled the stones up the ramp. But then you have to confront basic laws of physics. You can't haul a stone weighing tens of tons up a slope that exceeds 10 degrees. Then you start doing the calculation. How long a ramp do I need with a 10-degree slope to get to 350 feet above the ground? And the answer is you need a fucking long ramp, which should still be there.
Yeah.
Because it couldn't have been a sand ramp. It would have collapsed under the weight of those stones. It had to be as massive as the pyramid itself. So this begins to seem like an absurd idea, the idea that is foisted on us by archaeology. Maybe the idea that they regard as absurd, namely that psychic powers were cultivated by ancient civilizations, that they could use powers of the human mind that we have allowed to lapse, maybe that idea deserves further consideration. We have gone down a path of leverage and mechanical advantage. We're used to relying on machines, but we hear anecdotal reports of people who have telekinetic powers, who can move things with their minds, of people who have telepathic powers. And our automatic reaction is to just dismiss all of that because science says it's impossible, because science regards consciousness as local to the brain and doesn't see how it can exert itself outside of that. But maybe we should open up to those possibilities, that we're dealing with a very different kind of culture that used techniques that we have allowed to lapse. And maybe we could wake those techniques up again. Maybe the ability of human beings to do almost superhuman things is resident within all of us, but sleeping.
Well, it's pure speculation that they use some sort of a telekinetic power, but it's
pure
absolute.
Speculation.
But it's absolute that they did something that we don't understand. If you think about the distance between us and the construction, just the modern accepted construction dates of the Great Pyramid, it's more than 5,000 years ago, or close to 5,000 years ago.
Great Pyramid is supposed to be about 4,500 years old, yeah.
That's really old.
It's incredibly old, yeah.
To think that someone back then could do something that would perplex us today with modern machinery.
Yeah.
And that somehow or another they figured this out. It's almost like what they had done was leave behind something that was so stupendous stupendous, so monstrously impressive that it would transcend time.
Yeah.
And that you would have to look at it even thousands and thousands of years later and say, hey, like this defies conventional explanation. This is not a simple, and I've seen some of the conventional explanations of the construction of the pyramid, and they conveniently neglect those chambers above the king's chamber.
They do.
They conveniently neglect a lot of those massive stones.
Yeah.
And it's because it's one of those things you just go, oh, I don't know. What is this, Jamie?
They're the chambers
above
above the king's chambers, and each one of those floors consists of a row of 70-ton granite blocks that have been raised 350 feet above the ground, and not only that, but brought from Aswan in the south of Egypt, 500 kilometers south of the Great Pyramid. So